Very controversial to say. Marriage also is sex work because a lot of women, what they're doing is women engage in marriage from a place where, okay, he's.
Hey, beautiful people, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about marriage, and there's a controversial topic about marriage being the same thing as Smex work.
Very controversial to say. Marriage also is sex work because a lot of women, what they're doing is women engage in marriage from a place where, okay, ideally, he's gonna take care of you financially and there's a home for you both to live in. What you are doing is you're fulfilling a role. So you're going to either be some sort of like homemaker, homekeeper, you're raising and rearing the kids. You are partnering with him and sleeping with him in the hopes that the trade-off will be that you get validation, love, and upkeep. And the man understands and believes that if he continues to fulfill that role for you, then the arrangement works because marriage is an arrangement. Now, why I say it's prostitution is because whilst it's not necessarily on the surface, you're fucking for a transactional exchange, there's something that you're fucking for.
Comparing marriage to Smex work. What is your take on this? Of course, a lot of people did not agree with this. A lot of people were like, why would you compare a marriage with a Smex work? And one of the reasons why I feel like she might be comparing marriage to Smex work is because marriage sometimes can be transactional. And we know that marriage can be transactional for men only sometimes, maybe female sometimes. But generally, let's look at marriage normally. Can you compare marriage with sex work? Meaning that once sex is involved, men usually do things for you because once you stop having sex with your husband, they stop providing, they stop giving you things. So I feel like she's coming from that space whereby she's saying that marriage is transactional and is also sex work because if you don't have Smex, they're not going to give you money. If you have Smex, they might want to give you money. I have a reaction on this video to share with you all today. What is your take while we watch the reaction together? Can you share your thoughts down in the comment section respectfully, and I'll see you at the end of the videos.
It's going to be very controversial to say. Marriage also is sex work because a lot of women, what they're doing is women engage in marriage from a place where, okay, he's gonna take care of you financially. And
we're thinking too small. This debate shouldn't be about is it sex work or is it marriage. Rather, it is an entire sex economy that requires, commodifies, and extracts the erotic and sexual labor of all women, irrespective of if they're a wife or a sex worker. Now, within this sex economy, it is a spectrum, a sliding scale in which all women sit on to varying degrees. Now, let me beat you guys to it so you don't have to. Marriage is a beautiful thing. When two people love each other and want to spend the rest of their lives together. And if you are even religious, it is a spiritual covenant. And I truly believe those things, but on an interpersonal level. You see, my friends, marriage is also an institution. It is a structure, which means it has its own concrete history, its own politics, its own power dynamics, and its own legality, which means that we have to investigate it and analyze it beyond romantic feelings. Firstly, I just want to say that Sunflower's attempted argument is not new. As far back as the 19th century, we've had versions of this argument within academic, feminist, and leftist spaces. We've had greats such as Engels, to Sankara, to Dworkin, to Davis, to McKinnon, all make versions of this argument. Now, according to various elements of this argument, is this idea that marriage is a contract, that for a woman's domestic labor, her ability to have kids, i.e. her reproductive labor, which is still tied to sex, and of course the sex in itself, access to monogamous sex from women, right? All that in exchange for financial stability and financial security is what gives that comparison. Now, Sunflower argues that marriages are historically transactional, which is true. Love marriages were not really a thing until the late 18th century. So yes, sex work is transactional, and yes, marriage is also transactional. However, all transactional relationships are not sex work. In mathematics, this would be called a subset relationship, where all x is y, but all y is not x. Now, I've been seeing a lot of critique against this notion of transactional marriages, where people would say, oh, but that wasn't for regular folk, that was reserved for the bourgeois and for the upper classes who wanted to preserve their wealth and their property and for economic survival and financial stability. And that is not necessarily true because we always see this need for economic survival and this need for economic dependence. For example, in the UK, it was not until 1975 that women could open bank accounts in their own name. So let's understand that this need for economic survival and dependence is a historical phenomenon that actually has cut across all classes, of course, to varying degrees. Now, the next point is, it reminds me of a famous quote by the Marxist Engels. And he said, the sex worker sells her body as a wage worker, so for a wage, but the wife sells it once and for all. Now, before you guys clutch your pearls and you gasp and you shout and all that, think about it. It reminds me of every time I would hear a married man say, when he's trying to get his own way with his wife, and he'll say, but I paid her bride price. I paid something on her head. When you look at colonialism, especially in African countries, they made the whole bride price thing go from a cultural symbolism to a commodification process. So prior to colonialism, families could pay with livestock, foodstuff, or even their own labor to welcome their new wife. But then it got replaced with cash. So if we're going back to Engels' quote, the sex worker pays a wage, but the wife sells it once and for all. And how, for example, bride price became that one-time price almost for the wife. And so I know everyone gets icky about, oh, how is it money for sex in the same way? Of course, I would never agree that it is exactly the same, but it's going back to this notion of the sex economy and how, like I said, erotic and sexual labor of all women is commodified. Now, even fast forward to now, you can even go online and check all these online forums. I checked this one out, a Quora forum of many men asking if their wives withhold sex, can they also withhold money for the household? All I'm saying is, once you guys step out of your outrage and look at the history of it, the politics of it, it's not as outrageous as you think it is. I'll just leave it there. Now, what frustrates me about the outrage around what Slumflower said is that it hurts the hierarchy that many of you have created in your heads, or the hierarchy that you have aspired to. The outrage does not rest entirely on this perception of marriage as this sanctimonious thing. That is part of it, but I think also another part is that it hurts that perception that you are completely above and you are superior to women who are sex workers. And that is part of why you are very angry. And I think that that's really rich. It's rich because in this era of sprinkle and dating femininity coaches and all these women telling you how to get high value men, and they would tell you things like, go to this high-end bar and this hotel and this restaurant. And sex workers have come out to say that these dating femininity coaches are literally copying their practices. They're copying their playbook, which is known as freestyling. And that these women are copying from sex workers. But somehow you don't see why there's this comparison being made. Why? Because they are looking for a client and you are looking for a husband. That's what makes it so different. Okay, pause. Now, I'm also aware that many of you take exception to Sunflower's argument because of the dark underbelly that is associated with sex work, which really at this point it now becomes trafficking. And that is a very valid critique. But I do want to say this, that when we talk about the child trafficking, right, and the sexual exploitation of children forced into that industry, let us also not forget that in 117 countries, as of 2016, allowed child marriages. Now, why is this important? Like I said, it is an entire sex economy that requires, commodifies, and extracts the erotic and sexual labor of all women. Now, in 117 countries, as of 2016, that allow child marriages. And so children are forced into marriages to secure money for their families or for their families to have better livelihoods, etc. My problem with Slumflower's analysis is that she doesn't use any of these arguments in any meaningful way. She does not say, this is the commodification process that affects all women from sex workers to wives. There is a problem here in how men see women, period, right? Instead, she uses this analysis to say, well, men see us as commodities anyway, so I might as well extract as much money as I can from rich, wealthy men. And it is a complete shame because these analyses and theories come from anti-capitalist writers and thinkers who not only correctly observe the commodification processes of women and how it disadvantages them, but they also seek to how to dismantle these structures. And it is a shame that Slumflower takes, misappropriates, misapplies these theories for her own individualistic capitalistic agenda. She uses it as a way to bolster her own version of sugar daddy feminism. And it is completely just an uncharitable take. You know what? I will always say this. Sunflower does not owe us perfect politics. She's not going to be the one to dismantle the patriarchy, nor is she going to be the one to make the commodification process go away. But the least you can do is not shit on the work of people who are trying to do just that. So if you're interested in this topic, I will put a reading list at the very end of this video and you can screenshot it.
Marriage is not Smex work. Yes, I watched part of that Sunflower interview, and also I love me down some Jasmine Sullivan hotels. I don't know why Sunflower is repeating that particular skit that I deeply disagree with. It didn't make sense on the album that I love. I just saw Jasmine the other night. I do have a playlist with all of the skits. But marriage is not Smeg's work, and I think that's a byproduct of feeding way too much into the sprinkle hypergamy content and seeing all your relationships as transactional. Now, I could give it grace and understand that the dating landscape is deeply mean, cruel, and violent. And as a way to protect yourself, you in turn say, well, if I have to engage, what do I get out of it? And you turn all your relationships into transactional relationships. You're doing a deep disservice to yourself. First of all, because this is coming from a woman making the point that marriage is Smex work for the women, women have desires. And also this adage that like somehow men age and continue to have like a deep, like strong libido. I'm here to tell you, no, that's not true. Statistically, the data don't even support you in that. Anecdotally, you ain't supported in that. Do you know older women? Their libido doesn't decline before men's. Also, there's a whole bevy of health things that can impact your libido as well. So this idea that how your libido works is deeply gendered and as though a woman within the household is not going to have any romantic or sexual desires. Why would you do yourself that disservice? And this is why I'm a community-minded person, because my thought is also like, do y'all not reap joy, warmth, and just like good feelings that you can't even put words to from your other relationships? Or is it simply that you have friends that pay for everything and that's the value you get out of them? Why is the person who you intend to spend the most of your daily time with only good for what they can do physically for you? Partnering with somebody in a deeply meaningful way is way more than paying bills and paying for dates. Like, that is such surface level when you get into what does it mean to cohabitate with a person for a long, and then you add children into that mix. Like, guys, don't sell yourself short thinking that your labor should yield monetary value and that's all you're deriving from your partnerships. It is not Smex work. Smex work is transactional, and it has hard boundaries set around what they will and will not do for certain thresholds of income. That's not like, and it's not meant to sustain for a lifetime. It's not meant to sustain for a long time. I don't dislike Smex workers. The 304th, I love what y'all do. But that is not, what they do is not meant to maintain long-standing relationships. Why would y'all set yourselves up like that? That's crazy.
And this is going to be very controversial to say, but marriage also is sex work, because a lot of women, what they're doing is, and this is controversial to say.
Yeah, you heard that right. See, when the KGB, the CIA all met together, right, and say, hey, listen, let's just stop beefing for a second. We got to figure out how to keep destabilizing certain groups, in our countries. And then when the first intern, the first agent was like, hey, listen, go ahead. We're going to use these things called microphones. Going to drop them in the cities, right, in these urban areas. And it's going to be a way to just create the destabilization from the inside. I'm sure they all looked at that intern was like, you're an idiot, right? Because that's the only explanation I have. But you want to hear her tell you why she thinks the way she thinks, right? Okay, let's roll the tape.
Why I say marriage is prostitution is because what happens is women engage in marriage from a place where, okay, he's gonna take care of you financially, and there's a home for you both to live in. And what you are doing is you're fulfilling a role. So you're going to either be some sort of like homemaker, homekeeper, you're raising and rearing the kids, and you are partnering with him and sleeping with him in the hopes that the trade-off will be that you get validation, love, and upkeep. And the man understands and believes that if he continues to fulfill that role for you, then the arrangement works, because marriage is an arrangement. Now, why I say it's prostitution is because whilst it's not necessarily on the surface, you're fucking for a transactional exchange, there's something that you're fucking for.
But then there's the basis of a relationship.
And therein lies the problem. That's why old girl tried to reel her back in. We got to draw lines in the sand, right? She can't, I hate to say this, she can't envision the partnership portion of marriage, at least as we know it now, right? She only can see herself doing anything for a man in exchange for money. There's some reprogramming that's going to have to happen there, right? Like, we can deep this thing a lot more right now, but at the core of the issue is that she can't even, like, she can't recognize that good man, bad man, whatever. She can't recognize the partnership thing, but she can't even recognize tit for tat. I do for you, you do for me, other than bust it open for $1, a pound, or euro, or whatever currency she's using. We have to start drawing lines in the sand, folks, for anything. Music, politics, life, relationships. We've got to draw the lines. And you know, unfortunately, some people they're not gonna come with us to the promised land. What Dr. Umar say, we gotta let them go.
For once, do not agree with the fact that marriage should be compared with Smex work, because it's not every time you have Smex with your partner they pay you, but when you're doing the Smex working thing, you get paid in every transaction. If it's marriage, you don't get paid in every transaction. In fact, you might not even get paid at all, and they don't see it that way, as I am having Smex with you and I have to give you something. And I agree with the first creator of the political baby saying that marriage is paid. When it comes to marriage being paid, marriage is paid once, but when it comes to Smex work, you get paid frequently. I want to talk on that part because I'm in Africa and I know what bride price means. Okay, so they kind of pay bride price by material things or even money thing. In fact, now is you're gonna do the two. You're gonna bring material things. I think we've talked about bride price before on this channel. So gonna come with material things, then also money to please the family and ask for their daughter hand in marriage. After that first money that you've paid, you're not going back to keep on paying. In fact, if you don't go back to visit the family, nobody's going to owe you, nobody's going to beat you, nobody's going to do anything about it. After you pay that very first money, that bride price money, you don't need to pay another money. You don't need you might not even want to come visit the family anymore. You might not even give them any money and nobody's going to owe you accountable. And that's why you see most men when they do all of that, they keep threatening their wife at home and be like, I paid your bride price, I paid your bride price in full, so I am entitled to you alone. When it comes to having Smex when you're married, it's supposed to be done by two people that want to do it, not because of any transactional thing, but because they love each other and they want to have intimacy, they want to enjoy each other, right? But the way it is right now in marriages, most of the time, some women don't even enjoy it because men do not satisfy them at all. They just do it just because most of them are religious, and in the Bible you're supposed to give your body to your husband, or he's entitled to your body 100, right? So women most of the time might not be able to say no, or if you're saying no all the time, you're kind of pushing him away, and a lot of people are going to blame you for infidelity. I agree with the fact that marriage is transactional for men. All right, I agree with that fact. But when you compare marriage and Smex working, I do not agree with that at all. I feel like marriage is way, way different than Smex working, in my own opinion. And let's talk about the fact that men are always praised for being the ones that invented this, men designed this, men are the first person that did this. But then nobody talked about when women had the power to even have a bank account, had the right to even divorce, had the right to do so many things, or own a business in, worldwide anyway. Even till now, in some countries, a woman cannot come outside to just speak when there's no man. She cannot drive to any state where there is no man in the car, right? In some countries, it still happens. But then, what is your take on marriage and Smex walking? Or Smex walk? Do you think is the same thing? What is your take? I personally do not agree with that. I do not agree with that, right? What do you think? Can you share your thoughts down in the comment section respectfully. And thank you all so much for tuning in. It's your girl Maria Davids. I don't forget to like and share, and I'll see you all in my next video.